My first guest is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Thanks for coming back on the program.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, one of the biggest things we hear coming out of Washington is this has nothing to do with future spending. That's like saying the heroin I'm shooting today has nothing to do with the heroin I'm shooting tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, all the spending matters here. And whether the spending happened years ago or the spending is booked into the accounts in the future, it all matters. It all adds up. It is all contributing to our massive economic problems, including inflation, including runaway debt, $31 trillion and counting. If we don't get a handle on this, we're going to have massive tax increases. We're going to have massive spending cuts. We're not going to be able to meet obligations like our Social Security obligations via Medicare to senior citizens. We're going to have a huge calamity on our hands. So for Biden to go out there and call Republicans fiscally demented, I mean, he's got it completely in reverse here. His policies have driven this problem into the ground, has made it far, far worse than it was originally. And listen, Republicans are to blame too. Republicans have had a bad record on fiscal policy by and large over the past several years. But really, Biden has taken this and just taken it to an exponentially worse level.
All right, we keep hearing about these extraordinary measures that the Treasury Secretary can take. I didn't know that she had budgeting or allocation powers. So what are these extraordinary measures?
Yeah, the primary extraordinary measures that the Secretary of the Treasury utilizes here is there's a number of federal retirement programs. And what they do is they suspend payments into these retirement programs and instead use those funds for things like paying off our national debt, making the interest payments, I should say, on our national debt or Social Security payments or whatever obligations the federal government has. Now, eventually, those federal retirement programs are, of course, made whole once they resolve the debt issue, the debt ceiling issue. But temporarily, those are suspended so that they have more liquidity to make the payments that are of higher priority.
You know, one of my favorite things is, and I bring up foreign aid a lot, and Republicans and Democrats, I've had guests on my program say, Andrew, what are you talking about? It's just like 1% of the federal budget. Yeah, but that's what the penny plan is, right? I mean, if we instituted the penny plan and reduced federal spending by 1% every year, we would eliminate the deficit and start paying down the debt.
Yeah, I mean, it can start with the subsidies, the money that we send abroad to foreign countries. I'm perfectly fine with that. But like you said, that's not going to solve the problem. It's step one in a multi-step program that we need to get back on track. We need to look at entitlement programs. I would disagree with President Trump on that notion. The fact that we shouldn't make any kind of reforms whatsoever to Social Security, Medicare for future retirees, not talking about current retirees or near retirees. But folks that are going to retire down the road, we absolutely should be looking at these programs. We should be looking at defense spending as well, non-defense spending. We need to look across the federal budget. There's waste, there's fraud, there's misallocation of federal dollars in every department of this federal government. And we need to actually bring solutions to the table instead of taking certain departments that we like or certain programs that we like off the table. We need to have a very holistic conversation about this nation's fiscal trajectory.
A much younger me supported President Bush when he tried to privatize 2% of Social Security. Democrats went crazy. Media went crazy. People were scared. I, to this day, still like it. I don't understand why we can't have a partial privatization of Social Security where we're not feeding it from the general budget, that people make a decision to invest some of that money and it grows organically and maybe can grow tax-free. I don't see the danger in that. That means more money in the market for economic growth.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a win-win. I mean, these are policies that were talked about roughly 20 years ago. I was working in D.C. at the time. I was a big advocate as well. I still am, though they're not really. They don't really have much momentum on Capitol Hill anymore because President George W. Bush got burned pretty badly. But essentially, having retirees put a portion of their Social Security payroll
keyword portion.
Into a private
We're not
account.
Talking about total privatization here.
No.
We're not saying let's expose senior citizens to the volatility of market forces, but let's give whatever percentage of the population would like the opportunity to take a percentage and move that. This way it's growing and might require less action from the government. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for the economy because you're putting more money into the private sector. It's good for retirees because they're getting a higher return on those investments. And it's good for ownership because when you put that money into a private account, that is your money. You could pass it down to your descendants You can keep it. You can do with it as you see fit.
That's the part they don't like, though.
Yep.
Right. You know,
D.C.
DC likes the idea of you putting your money into Social Security your whole life, then not being around to collect so they could send that money someplace else.
Exactly. The Supreme Court has upheld the fact that your Social Security dollars are not your Social Security dollars. They're the federal government's Social Security dollars. And if they decide to change the rules of the road, they can push those dollars to whatever kind of program or obligation they see fit. That's not your money. That couldn't take place if we had private retirement accounts. That would be your money. Bank on it. Pass it down to your kids. Pass it down to your grandkids. Spend it in your retirement. Do with it as you see fit.
I think the penny plan, the spending cap, the current spending cap, future 1% reduction, that penny plan. I think these are all good things. I think, and I don't think we'd be even talking about it, moving towards a fair tax or the flat tax if Kevin McCarthy, just easily transitioned into being Speaker of the House. If we do not get this debt under control at some point, just the interest alone will be 100% of GDP. Then what? I don't have time for the answer because I got to leave it there, but you're always welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'll be happy to